Okay, well, I'm Bob. I'm a compulsive overeater. I'm an alcoholic, and I want people to like me. So, anyway, I got a great topic today, and it really says it all. The topic is the world is our mind. Okay, now we were just talking before, and it seemed like we were sort of hitting upon that. And that's a great thing to know that our thinking is what the whole world is. So, once we understand that it's our thinking that creates the world, then we know what we can go from there. Before I thought it was the world that was, imposing everything on me and I let it, but now I know I could change all that by my thinking. And we have a way here. It's called, and we were talking about it before, it's called that spiritual awakening. And we want to get it right here, right now. We don't have to wait 5 years, 10 years. We don't have to go to 1,000 meetings. We don't have to have how many sponsees. And then we were talking before about reading self-help books, and I had shelves full of them. It didn't help, but we have a solution here. It even starts in Doctor's Opinion. He starts right there, and he says, look, the only thing all the modern science and everyone figured out was the only answer was a spiritual or a change. He called it back then moral psychology. He didn't want to use the word spiritual. He wasn't unsure he could go that far then. But he talked about that, and it goes on from there. And in Bill's story, we read about he had that awakening, change of thinking when his friend Ebby came in. He didn't even recognize Ebby. Ebby was like a new man. He saw it in his eyes. He saw a whole disposition. Ebby before was a down and out Bowery drunk, but when he came and visited him in his little apartment in Brooklyn, and he sat right across the table from him. He said, and he asked Ebby, he said, what happened? And Ebby said, I got religion. When we talk about religion in this program, we have the steps. The steps, again, a lot of people say, hey, this AA, OA, whatever it is, with our food problems, our addiction to alcohol, addiction to people, it's all like they say, a lot of times on the internet, they'll talk about it as being a cult. But look, when we look at these steps, and when I read the first part of this big book, it all talks about all the ancient philosophies, the East and Western philosophies. Look even at step 11. What does step 11 say? Through prayer meditation. And for me, I'll just say one quick thing. When I'm silent and I pray or I meditate, and when I get out of the self and just get into the source, the happiness, joy here, I realize that my problems, the answer to them, that they really don't matter. Okay? They really don't matter. All of these things, even, I always say this, my own death, it only matters when I'm in the self. When we get this thing, we get out of the self. When I'm out of Bob, then all the whole life, surrenders to me. Because when I'm in Bob, I want to carry the world around my shoulders. I want everything to be about me. Step 1 says alone, we admitted we were powerless. We couldn't do it. So we had to get that change of thinking, that transformation, being reborn. It talks about in step 3. I mean, this is the whole program here. It's a very, very simple program. But no, we got to complicate it. Even, I always say this, even the big book has 600 pages, right? So no, we got to do that. We got to call 100 people when we have a problem and ask them the answer to our problem, and that they may help us. We got to think about it, analyze it, try to figure out how. Hey, look, if I have a problem with somebody, I know how I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to show them who I think I am. Let them know, set them straight. The problem isn't the other person. There's going to be a lot of people here with problems. But, when I try to straighten somebody out, they're crazy for trying to get in my face maybe or do whatever they do to aggravate me. Right? Who knows even if they are? Most of the time it's an illusion in our brain, right? That we think they are. We're sort of paranoid. The whole world is against us. But how crazy am I if I react to it and try to be, to try to make them let them control me, right? They talk about it here in the book. We let the people, situations in life control us. And with all of that, I didn't understand why I got so depressed before I did these steps and why I was so miserable, right? Well, because I wanted to control everything, Desire is the cause of all suffering, as we talked about before, if we want to control the world. So, well, one saying I love that refers to this is we could conquer the whole world, but if we don't conquer the self, it's the self we have to conquer. We have like this battlefield in the mind, and so that's why the topic is the world is in our mind. And it's the greatest thing to know. It's the great thing to know that we can choose our thinking, we can change it. And it's a great thing to know that the self can't do it. When we started to realize the self was everything my parents taught me, society taught me how to be, how to act, and what life is all about. So we see things through these glasses, so to speak, but it's not really the real real world. You want to get centered and know it, know the love, tolerance, and patience and feel the vibration of the world. It tells us here, meditate and pray. But first we had to get out of the self. We had to realize, and we said before that, that where the problem was. Because step said one, I was powerless, step one said. So here I was going around trying to control everything. Well, why wouldn't I? I was brought up to think more money, more success, more more this, more getting people to like me. Think about an example like this. Suppose, you go to a meeting and you want people there to like you. And, I heard somebody share at the meeting, they felt like they weren't part of the in crowd. Why not go to a meeting and suppose everybody there hated you and be happy and joyous? Why not? Because the joy and happiness doesn't come from the outside. And I'm going to use that example again in the man who climbs Mount Everest. He was looking for something outside of him, right? So even if we go to a meeting and somebody that likes us, it's a momentary pleasure. And on the other side is just as much devastation, because when we leave the meeting and we meet somebody who doesn't like us, we're upset. So we want this point of neutrality. Step 10 promises say, not find anyone or anything. So directly to our addiction, a lot of people I know are here, and I know myself, one of my big addictions was with the food. So the food has everything to do with this, because we want to control. The ego says, if I have more people like me, but it says the same with the food. So do you follow that? That everything in our lives is related to our addictions to food, alcohol, drugs, and people, and that is all related to everything in our lives. The ego. And the ego is false. So anytime, let's take the food, you have this desire to have more of your addiction, more food, we're coming from the self. The more we want people to like us, we're coming from the self. And when we get out of the self, we can be happy. And that's the defects of character talks about what? Bill mentions the 7 deadly sins. One of them is gluttony. And he talked about pride being the main one. Pride, ego, self. Just imagine when you lose the self, and if you were to walk out of the house today, how wonderful that would be, right? You wouldn't care what people thought about you, said about you. You go for a job, say you're looking for a job now, or whatever it is, or if somebody did something or cut you off on the highway, out of the self. Or even again, I always mention our own death, or people around us, unfortunately things happen to them. But it's always related to the self. Even if something happens to somebody, or if I think something's going to happen, that's where all the fear and upset comes from. The future is anxiety, and the past is depression. We can be in the present right now here with our eternal higher consciousness. But anyway, if somebody in my life, something happens to them, I think about it, I'm always thinking of how am I going to go on if they're not around, or what can I do now? The other person is probably resting in peace somewhere, as they say, and but yeah, we take it upon ourselves